For decades, Canadians have been the most frequent international visitors to the United States, and one of its most important trading partners. Every year, millions head south for beaches, shopping, and vacations in places like Florida, New York, Las Vegas, and throughout New England. But this year, all of that has suddenly changed.
Canadians are making a mass exodus, and now businesses on our Gulf Coast saying they are feeling the impact.
The summer swing never happened for us either.
I don't know if it's the hurricane, the economy, a mix of the two, but we've definitely been, everybody around here that I spoke to has been down about 30% this year.
If we travel at all, it won't be to here. And for sure it won't be here. We'll go elsewhere.
Their son even considered retiring here.
We thought about maybe purchasing a property in Florida, but now we may reconsider that, and Mexico is looking quite appealing.
Businesses say feelings like this are having an impact on them.
It is having not only a negative impact on the tourism market, but business as a whole.
Canadian travel to the United States is collapsing. In July of this year, auto trips from Canada to the US fell 37% year over year, while flights were down 26%. At the same time, visits by Canadians to overseas destinations increased. Now, earlier in the year, Axios reported that advanced bookings for April through September travel were down more than 70% compared to 2024. So what explains this sudden shift? Well, in this video, we're going to look at why Canadians are boycotting America and what kind of economic impact that's already having across the country. This is what happens when one man's words and policies collide with reality. Canada's boycott is already draining billions from the US economy, and it may only be the beginning. The economic fallout from this boycott is clearly visible, particularly in tourism, which I'm going to focus on quite a bit. The World Travel and Tourism Council projected a $12.5 billion loss in international tourism spending for the US this year, while Tourism Economics warns that the hit could reach as high as $29 billion, as Canadians and other overseas visitors look elsewhere. But this boycott is part of a broader consumer uprising, and it's affecting more than just tourism in the US. Canadian shoppers are even using apps to avoid US-made items, and certain liquor stores throughout Canada have pulled American wine and spirits from shelves entirely. US alcohol exports plunged more than 60%, costing hundreds of millions of dollars. This boycott is not just symbolic, it's very, very real. So why are Canadians suddenly staying away? The answer is politics, both in policy and in tone. And I know some people aren't going to want to accept this, or they'll pretend it's just not a big deal. But the truth is, economics is inherently political, whether you want it to be or not.
But love for Canada's closest ally appears to be fizzling. 77% of Canadians who responded say they think less of the US because of Trump's threats against Canada. And almost the same amount say they'll be avoiding travel south of the border.
On March 4th, Trump imposed tariffs of up to 25% on nearly all Canadian imports, from lumber to aluminum to food products. Canada then immediately retaliated with its own tariffs on US goods. That alone strained cross-border trade and travel. I should note, because this context is key. Trump originally said he was imposing these tariffs so that Canada would do more to stop the flow of fentanyl smuggled into the country from their border. But that claim doesn't hold much merit in many experts' opinions, because according to data from US Customs and Border Patrol, less than 1% of all seizures of fentanyl entering the US so far this year were made at the Canadian border. This is roughly the same amount as it was last year, less than 1%. But the rest, which is over 99%, well, that comes from the southern border. But who needs these silly facts anyways, right? Trump then raised the tariffs to 35% on August 1st. Today, those tariffs are scattered across industries, a result of his policies alone. There's 50% tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and copper, a 25% tariff on autos, and now the 35% on just about everything else. But what really stung Canadians was his rhetoric. Trump suggested on more than one occasion that Canada could avoid tariffs altogether if it just became America's 51st state.
And to be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. We don't need anything they have.
Canadian leaders obviously condemned these remarks, and polls showed ordinary Canadians weren't going to stand for this. A way of saying they won't spend their money on products or vacations in a country that threatens them and imposes tariffs on them for no good reason. That sentiment has clearly taken on a life of its own. From social media to major news outlets, we can really begin to see the impact this is having on America. So I want to show you more about how it's affecting certain parts of the US so far. Florida is one of the perfect examples of why these boycotts matter. On paper, the state is having a great year. According to Florida state officials, in the second quarter of this year, Florida welcomed 34.4 million visitors, the most ever for that quarter. Officials point to the record as proof that the state's tourism industry is unstoppable. Now, importantly to note, these numbers are obviously backward-looking, so they could end up being revised down in the future. But the cracks are already showing in Florida, because in many counties, they're already reporting declines in spending and in traffic, which is leading to many business owners and employees becoming seriously concerned about their future. Those statewide visitor numbers I just mentioned are being propped up by domestic travelers, Americans flying in from New York or driving down from Georgia. But the high-spending Canadians aren't showing up the same way they used to. Florida is one of Canada's favorite destinations in the US, especially during the winter months. And I have a strong feeling that this winter, Florida will really begin to feel the effects of this Canadian boycott.
Boycotting paradise because of politics, Floridians are now seeing less Canadians flock to the Sunshine State.
Definitely have we had a big drop in Canadian visitors, and I've actually called several of them that used to come every year and spend a lot of money on these beachfront rentals. They're saying, sorry, buddy, we're out for the foreseeable future.
The Florida market is so intertwined with Canadians.
Canadians are our number one foreign visitor group. So they bring a lot of money here. And we're noticing it. We're feeling it.
This same story is playing out along the northern border, in cities like Buffalo and Plattsburgh, New York, which have long depended on Canadians crossing the border to shop, eat, and fill hotel rooms. But over the last several months, New York is really beginning to feel the economic pain from fewer Canadians crossing the border.
For months, we've heard the same things from business owners.
This year specifically, things seem to be a little bit slower than normal. Not sure exactly what to attribute to that to.
We spoke with Joe Hotchkiss back in June. A few weeks later, his restaurant, Power City Eatery on 3rd Street, Niagara Falls, announced its closure. Now, new Canadian data showing that June was the 6th consecutive month of year-over-year declines in Canadian travel to the U.S. by car. Visit Buffalo Niagara also getting creative, posting these billboards all around the Toronto area.
Back in Buffalo, pumping out IPAs, shandies, and stouts at Resurgence Brewing Company is costing owner Jeff Ware much more than it did a year ago because of tariffs on Canadian goods.
You could throw a baseball across the border here, and we get a lot of our grain, if not almost all of our grain, from Canada. And then most of our aluminum, if not all of our aluminum, comes from Canada.
And one thing he didn't anticipate, Canadians upset with the trade war who no longer cross the border for his brews.
Other border states like Maine are also struggling. The state's summer tourism economy relies heavily on visitors from Quebec and the maritime provinces. New data from U.S. Customs and Border Protection shows border crossings into Maine fell by 28% in July, compared to the same time last year, the 6th consecutive month of decline in Canadian travel to the state. Many business owners say they've noticed the change, and towns that depend on cross-border tourism are worried about what this means for their future.
Instead of crossing the border to Maine, more Canadians are staying home this year. Blake Laughlin owns Corners Surf Company at Old Orchard Beach. He says most of his summer regulars are Canadians who come to rent surfboards and take surfing lessons. But Laughlin says business is down 25% this month.
For Maine and much of New England, Canadian travelers are the lifeblood of small businesses and a key driver of local economies.
This is every registration card from last year. This is the Canadian. That's my American. This just went away.
That's all you got now. That doesn't pay the bills.
Does not.
Farther west, Las Vegas is feeling it too. I covered this more in depth in a recent video, but I think what's most notable to mention is Nevada's tourism numbers had already began softening this year, with fewer domestic visitors booking trips. But now, losing Canadians makes their problem much worse. Traffic for Air Canada was down 13% month over month in June and was down a whopping 33% year over year.
National travel is way down. People are not coming to the United States. We have a rather large market with the Canadians. It's gone from, a faucet to a drip. Same thing in Mexico. We have a number of very high rollers that come in from Mexico that aren't so keen on coming in right now.
Now, it doesn't stop there. Airlines have already cut capacity on US-Canada routes because demand has all but collapsed. Shopping trips that once buoyed outlets in places like Vermont, Michigan, and Washington State are drying up. Even ski resorts in Colorado and New England are quietly bracing for a weak winter season if Canadians keep staying away. What makes this moment different is that it's not about economics alone. Canadians clearly aren't adjusting travel plans because of prices or the exchange rate. They're doing it as a political statement, and the polls clearly back that up. Because the reality is, even though half of America didn't vote for this, they still feel the consequences too, which hopefully makes more people realize what's going on here. When one man can start trade wars without any congressional oversight and hurl insults at America's closest ally, an economic boycott seems completely understandable to me. The longer this goes on, the more it looks like America is sabotaging its own economy. For what? I don't know. I don't think anyone really knows. But what is clear is it's pushing away a partner it can't afford to lose. If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more about why Las Vegas is seeing that decline that I mentioned, well, I covered it in this video here. Please check it out next. Thanks for watching.